On Tech News Today, we've got exclusives on the Apple Car, Google Chromecast, the TSA Luggage Lock, and a new system that the Pentagon is rolling out to protect themselves from hackers. We'll talk to all the journalists who broke all these stories. It's all coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, September 18th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring? With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 100-plus job sites, including social networks, all with a single click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Try ZipRecruiter with a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And by Gazelle. Would you like to get cash for your old iPhone? Gazelle makes it easy. The shipping is free and the payment is fast. What's your iPhone worth? Find out at Gazelle.com. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. My name is Mike Elgan, and our co-anchor today is the Next Web reporter, Lauren Hockenson. Welcome to you, Lauren.
Hi, Mike.
Now, the publication you write for is called The Next Web. The word "the" is in it, the. And when I say the Next Web reporter, it sounds like you're the only person doing all that work. And you do a lot of work, but you don't do all of it. So just to be clear on that.
Yeah, I don't. There's a great, wonderful, supportive team that is behind me. It's not just me and my one band, like tromping down the street, trying to drum up journalism for money.
Yes, exactly.
It's a bunch of people.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of people.
It's good to know. It's reassuring. Now, we had an interesting thing. I just wanted to mention it here today. Padre is, of course, we reported yesterday that Amazon came out with spectacularly low-priced tablets, especially their 7-inch Fire tablet, which they said is around $50. That's being reported is around $50. And they also have a 6-pack where you can get 6 for the price of 5. And so he sent around an email this morning among the Twit staff and I guess some other people that he knows and said, hey, who wants to pitch in for a 6-pack? And everybody jumped in there to the point now where we're going to need another 6-pack. So I think we're getting 2 6-packs. And on this anecdotal information alone, I'm going to predict that this strategy is going to be amazingly successful because it's just an impulse buy. That's a price point. After taxes and everything, Padre calculated that each person will pay $48.31 for a 7-inch tablet. So
a nice 7-inch tablet, too.
Yeah.
It's actually a really good piece of hardware. I had the opportunity to take a look at it in person at a meeting at Amazon this week. And it's pretty spiffy. It's not bad.
Yeah, my wife and I went to dinner the other night at a fairly disreputable restaurant that wasn't particularly good, and we paid significantly more than $48.31 for that meal. And these tablets last for years. So it's really an amazing deal. So good strategy, Amazon. I hope it pays off for you. Well, let's jump into the news. Mark Harris reports in a Guardian exclusive that Apple executives have met with officials at the California Department of Motor Vehicles. They probably didn't have to wait for hours and hours either. Almost certainly about this meeting was about Apple's Project Titan self-driving car initiative. Mark joins us now to talk about it. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Hi, Mike. Great to be with you.
So glad you're back on the show. Now, where did this information come from?
Well, it came from a public records request. I found lots of these requests with various public agencies around the world. And I really just asked, has Apple been in to see you guys? Are you having a chat with them? And they very kindly said, yes, they had. And the focus of that discussion was autonomous vehicles, which was, I was kind of surprised that Apple were that far along, to be honest.
Yeah, it's really interesting right now. I mean, I believe that Google just deployed their car into Austin, Texas, but you have companies like Uber kind of feeling out this automated car system. Were you able to sort of target, I guess, at all where Apple is in this process and whether or not it's really competing in this race with Google and Uber, or if it's just running at its own Apple-y pace?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, the one thing I will say is that you don't need to talk to the DMV to work on your self-driving car. If you're working away in a little lab somewhere and you haven't got any intention to put it on the road and you're not out in public, you don't need to talk to the DMV. There's no need. You can just test along on your private test track somewhere. So the fact that they are talking to the DMV, the fact that they have gone in there for a discussion with, the biggest names in regulation of autonomous vehicles at the moment. California is way ahead of other states in terms of getting things tested and thinking about getting them on the road. If you're doing that, it suggests that you're pretty close. There's 10 companies already have their autonomous vehicle testing permit. Google was one of the first. Volkswagen's there, BMW's there, Honda quite recently, and a bunch of technology companies too, like Cruise. There you go. You can see the list. And these guys, not all of them are anywhere near production. And I'm not saying Apple is anywhere near production, but they're out there testing it in public, testing their cars on the road to see the kind of real world situations that they're going to hit. And it strikes me that Apple is inching along its way to being in a very similar position.
And of course, that's the exciting part of it, is that number one, it's pretty far along, and number two, if they are in fact going to have actual cars on the roads, we're going to see them. Somebody's going to take a picture. It'll be uploaded somewhere to 9 to 5 Mac or something like that. And I think we're all curious about what an Apple car would look like. Is it going to look like an iPod Shuffle with wheels? Like, what is this thing going to look like? It could be like a Prius or something like that, with retrofitted initially. Mm-hmm. Now, a phrase that you wrote struck me. You said that that Apple met with the DMV's self-driving car experts. Mm-hmm. The DMV has self-driving car experts.
And I have to say, they're really smart guys. I mean, these are people who are thinking about how we're actually going to live with these vehicles with us on the road, and they're really thoughtful people that have thought about the practical implications of putting this untested technology, this very new technology, on the road. And so they're asking for lots of technical and logistical bits and pieces, such as reporting every time even the car, not that it crashes, obviously they have to tell you if it has a bump, but even just when the car gets confused and hands back the control to its safety driver, exactly how that's going to work and exactly how that process fits together. I mean, yeah, it is kind of strange to think of the DMV, one of the most disliked public agencies, doing some great work here, and is actually driving the industry and really helping the industry come to grips with how it's going to get its technology and its cars up there, out there on the real roads.
Now, Mark, I'm actually really interested. I mean, obviously, there's only a small group of companies that are currently able to sort of test their autonomous vehicles. We just put up the list. Are there any specific kind of requirements that a company needs in order to go to the DMV and do this? Do they need to have like a model car in their shed? Do they need to be anywhere along? Or is this just like a handshake, red tape, like, yeah, you can do this at some point in time?
It's kind of in between the both. I mean, they need, for California, they need to fill out this form that specifies what car they're going to test with, and it really needs to be a production vehicle that they're testing with. So that means it has to have like a VIN number, the identification vehicle. So it has to be a car that is safe to drive on the roads anyway. It can't just be a little go-kart they put together, which is why Google had to become a car manufacturer in order to actually get its little koala cars, its purpose-built cars on the road. But beyond that, it doesn't really have to share too much details about how the autonomous technology works. There is a regulation in the DMV says you will explain how your car works and its features and capabilities. But to be honest, none of the companies have done that, except in the vaguest terms about sensing its environment and being a good driver. So. Yeah, I mean, the good news is, you're not going to get completely jury big, garage homemade cars out on the roads. But unfortunately, we're not going to find out too much more about the actual secret sauce in these cars, for some time. The manufacturers, understandably, are keeping it pretty close to their chest.
Now, I understand why Google is creating a self-driving car technology. This actually was something that Sergey and Larry were interested in college, and one of their professors said, don't do that. That's so far off. Why don't you work on a search engine? And then I understand why Uber is working on it, because it solves all of their problems with people suing them and demanding to be employees. I understand why lots of people are doing this. I don't understand why Apple is doing this. This is a company that makes a very small number of products. They got a line of phones, a line of tablets, a line of computers, a couple lines of computers. Why would they get into the transportation business? I'm asking for your personal opinion. Why do you think Apple is building a self-driving car?
I was really surprised too, Mike, to be honest. before I started digging into this and really finding out that these were facts and not just rumors, I was as skeptical as you. I was like, what, why go into a new big business with all these vehicles and all these people and low margins? But the more I look into it, the more, it would appeal to a company that is almost as big as it's going to get in entertainment. I mean, they are a dominant position in communications. They're in a masterly position over the control of the entertainment that we watch through Apple TV, through phones, through tablets. They're sitting on a mountain of cash. Why not look into disrupting something else? Why not looking to actually make a dent in another industry and potentially an industry that could have really great benefits in terms of the environment and cutting down the number of accidents on the road is something they're all talking about. Plus, of course, it gives you another. If you're in an Apple self-driving car, you've just got hours more each day to consume your Apple products and videos, and to give them money in other ways as well. So, it's a bit of a leap, but it does seem to be happening. It actually really does seem to be something they're working on. I mean, who knows whether it's going to turn into a product, right? That's the big question. Is this going to be a product, or is this just something that they're, pushing forward because they've got so much money?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. I mean, I suspect something along the lines of what you're saying, which is essentially that it's the Android model. I mean, Google got into the mobile operating system market, I believe, because they were afraid of being locked out. I mean, they make their living on advertising. They thought that the future of the internet was mobile. And they were afraid that other operating systems would just decide, well, we're not going to have the Google stuff in there. And so they would be kind of locked out. So they took the bull by the horns. They launched their own, and now it's the world's biggest operating system. I think Apple may be having similar fears. We could just own the phone market. We could own the whole market for consuming content, essentially. But we could be locked out of the auto industry. We could be locked out of those dashboards, and people spend hours and hours every day in their cars sometimes. So that could be what they're thinking. But again, like you said, we'll see if this actually becomes an iProduct. Mark Harris is at meharris.com. You can read him on The Guardian and elsewhere, and you can find him on Twitter at meharris. That's M.E. Harris. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Always a pleasure.
More news coming right up, but first let's talk about ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter is far more awesome for hiring people than you could possibly know unless you've actually used it. When you use ZipRecruiter, what you learn is that you can collaborate. They give you the tools to collaborate, and they don't charge you extra for more people involved in your job search. So, for example, they have a team collaboration system that lets you have an entire team rate, organize, filter, and share notes and add labels to the candidates that you have coming in. So it's a great way to have people, even in different departments, even in different parts of the country, who are working on the same hiring decision. You can create custom email responses. You can use their embeddable job widget to put it on your website. You can add, of course, multiple users to your account, like I said, without additional charge. And this is really important when you're doing job searches. I mean, traditionally, the way job searches used to work is you needed lots and lots and lots of people to work on the hard part of posting the job everywhere and then dealing with the big flow of candidates. ZipRecruiter turns that around. They make it super easy for one person to, with a single click, post on 100+ job boards, including the social networks. And then you can bring in lots of people to consider the candidates, to interview them, to do the important part there. So they really make hiring fantastic. And we have a happy ZipRecruiter client testimonial from Lisa, who said, "I'm a business owner, yet novice when it comes to navigating these job boards and searching for the qualified candidates for my company. This morning was another near catastrophe that I avoided due to the help of one customer service agent by the name of Jed. He not only helped me out, but went above and beyond to make sure that I was satisfied. And for that, I am grateful and would recommend ZipRecruiter to anyone." And you can try ZipRecruiter today for free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. You got to check it out. Very awesome stuff. 9 to 5, Google's Stephen Hall reports that Google will massively update the Chromecast, and soon. Stephen is here to talk about it. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Hey, how's it going, Mike?
It's going great, thanks. Now, you obtained some internal Google documents, or Google Docs, I'm sure they call them, which reveal details about a second-generation Chromecast. What did you learn from these documents?
Yeah, so there's a few things. We have evidence, pretty solid evidence, in fact, of a second-generation Chromecast, which has definitely been long awaited. And on top of that, we're also looking at some new software features Google's planning to, in collaboration with Spotify, finally bring Spotify support to Chromecast, which is something that a lot of people have been asking for a long time. And there's also going to be a new app that Google is launching alongside this new Chromecast, which they're actually introducing a lot of features that would look similar to someone who is paying attention to the Apple TV announcements.
So I'm a really huge fan of my Chromecast. It's like my little utilitarian dongle that like sits in the back of my TV and I can just load things up onto it. And, you know, I'm just used to flinging stuff on from apps, and even, you know, the workaround with Spotify works pretty reliably. Are you seeing that Google is moving away from that sort of like utilitarian dongle and moving towards a more full-fledged cord-cutting option that will compete with the likes of Apple TV or the next generation Roku? Or are we still going to see the same Chromecast we know and love?
Well, with this hardware, I mean, honestly, looking at these images, and I can almost guarantee you that they're legitimate, but looking at them, I honestly can't tell what this device is. It's really confusing. There's like this thing sticking out of the top of it, and I just honestly have not figured out what it is yet. However, in the internal documents that I did look at, the pricing was too blurry for me to be able to make it out, but it was definitely in the 30 to 40 pound/dollar range. So I'm thinking that this is still going to be something that is aimed at, like you're saying, those who want to just throw some content on their TV. They're not looking to get into the Apple TV area with this, because they already have a competitor to the Apple TV, and that's called the Nexus player.
My vote is that they double as ping pong paddles. Basically, what it looks like is there's a electronics part that looks like it plugs in somewhere, and then there's a round thing. It could be it could be a balloon or something that expands with more data that you have in it. Who knows? It's confounding. It's probably just a round piece of plastic, but we'll see what it actually looks like when they announce it week after next, presumably. Now, you wrote a separate story about Spotify support in the Chromecast coming up. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so obviously Chromecast has supported a lot of streaming services, and for both video and audio since it was launched, including Google Play Music and Netflix and Pandora and plenty of others. But one that has not had any kind of Chromecast support is Spotify. And as you may know, like, Spotify is definitely one of the most popular music streaming services around right now. So Google in these documents mentioned that they are planning to announce at the event later this month that they are partnering with Spotify to bring Chromecast support to Spotify. And along with that, Google mentioned something called Chromecast Audio, which is not to be confused with Google Cast for Audio, which is Google's platform for actually making hardware speakers compatible with Chromecast. It's actually going to be something that allows, according to these documents, speakers and sound systems to connect to the Chromecast directly and basically Wi-Fi enable any set of speakers in your home.
And that's very, very cool. And of course, once they do the partnership with Spotify, you'll be able to use Spotify to watch Tech News Today and other TWiT programming. Just thought I'd throw in a little plug there. Stephen Hall is at 9 to 5 Google, and on Twitter at Stephen Hall _ at the end. Stephen, thank you so much for this awesome scoop, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, you may have heard that the TSA's strongly recommended luggage locks have been hacked, and that the locks' master keys have been posted online and can be 3D printed. The TSA has officially responded to the hack, and the response will astound you. Jenna McLaughlin writes about surveillance and national security for The Intercept and has the exclusive on their response. Welcome to the show, Jenna.
Hi, thanks, Mike.
Thanks for coming on. Now, before we get into TSA's response, can you talk about how these locks work and how these were promoted by the TSA when first introduced about 12 years ago?
Sure, absolutely. So when the TSA first started marketing these travel sentry locks, they were saying that this is a way to compromise between having TSA be able to inspect your luggage and make everything secure, especially post 9/11, but also so that you can still maintain your security. You can put the lock back on, so no one else at all besides the TSA agents can have access to your luggage. So it was never marketed in a sense of just being, kind of for your peace of mind. It was marketed as a way to increase your security.
Now, the hack locks actually, from what you mentioned in the story, came from like Washington Post photos. How is it that they were able to take these like photos and designs and just up close shots of these master keys and turn them into like 3D printed hacked keys?
Sure. So how the whole thing started, it's kind of an interesting saga that the whole thing wasn't previously reported. So the Washington Post did a story a year ago about, which include photos of the TSA keys. So yeah, they're there. So various people on the internet, a few people on Reddit started noticing that those photos were out there, and they started kind of discussing, can we possibly copy the keys from this image? Are the photos detailed enough so that we can see the ridges of the keys and actually create CAD files so that people can 3D print them? And most people have said that even just the Washington Post photos would have been enough to do that. But actually, even there was an additional thing that happened where a couple hackers on Reddit were sort of thinking, can we get any more detailed photos? Could we make this even stronger? And Travel Sentry was actually hosting a document which was completely unprotected. All that these people had to do was crawl the website and get a hold of a specific URL, and they got access to incredibly detailed photos of the master keys.
So that's the company that's in charge of enforcing security guidelines for the TSA-approved locks, and they're the ones who published what was needed to 3D print the keys.
Essentially, yes. Unknowingly, they didn't intend for that document to be public, but it was not very well protected at all.
And when they were told that it wasn't well protected and that people had access to these keys, their response was just, meh.
Pretty much, that was TSA's response. TSA essentially said, these locks aren't really a part of our security scheme. We don't really care. They're more for travelers' peace of mind than anything. When luggage is in our possession, these keys don't prevent us from going into the luggage. And, this isn't important to us, really. So
basically, all those years when they were saying, you really have to get these locks, these are really going to protect you, we highly recommend this is part of our security, they were lying. Is that what we learned?
Essentially, yes. And technical experts, including Chris Seguin at ACLU, have said, this is just a straight up lie, that these locks were meant to be important for security. If the TSA is saying this, then there was never that intention.
Yeah, I mean, especially considering the fact that it seems like even plastic keys are able to open it. They don't even need to cast it in metal. Is that correct?
Yep, for sure. One of the cheaper materials that you can use with the 3D printer is called PLA, and that's what most people used. It took 90 minutes, costed, a couple bucks.
I for one, would love to see an estimate on how much money was spent on luggage and locks based on the advice of the TSA. Only for them to say, oh, it's just to make you feel better. It doesn't actually do anything.
That's a really good question, actually. I might follow up on that.
Yeah, wonderful.
Check and see how much money was made on these locks.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Jenna, that was a fantastic story. Really, really great stuff. Jenna McLaughlin is at theintercept.com. That's theintercept.com. And on Twitter at JennaMC_laugh. Jenna, thank you so much for the story and for coming on Tech News today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, bye-bye. The Pentagon is building a huge system to get a handle on the many security vulnerabilities of the U.S. military's computer networks, weapon systems, and installations, according to an exclusive on Reuters by Andrea Shalal. Andrea joins us now to talk about it. Welcome to the show, Andrea.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Now, you wrote that the goal is to create an automated scorecard. I believe either they called it or that was your coinage. How will this scorecard work?
Well, they're still in the process of putting the framework together. So they're still trying to build exactly what that's going to look like. But the goal is for the Pentagon, which is a huge, enormous organization with various military services and many, many different agencies, to have a sort of centralized overview of where the vulnerabilities are, where are their problems, so that they can really make a plan for how to, get a handle on the worst of these problems. Michael Gilmore, the head of the Pentagon's chief weapons tester, in January published a report that said that nearly every major weapons system was vulnerable to attack, and his red teams, testers, would go out to installations, to transportation command, and be able to, with very simple things, be able to break into systems. So it was pretty appalling, and I think it really sent a big ripple through the Pentagon, saying, "Wow, we've got to get a handle on this now." So this is one piece of that response.
Now, is something like a scorecard going to be able to help, I guess, bolster or batten down the hatches of the Pentagon? Because it seems like they are just experiencing wave after wave of hacks. I know that recently in the news, there's been a lot of talk of China hacking and also Russia hacking. And is this something that the Pentagon can do on its own and just with like a simple checklist?
I think it's actually something that they've been working on for a while. So each of the individual agencies and services already has a sense of its networks and where the vulnerabilities are. This is a process of sort of connecting the dots, putting all those things together, and taking a broader view. So they're looking at, for instance, and not just the weapon systems themselves, but also the bases and the power generation, the industrial controls that could be hacked on military bases. All sorts of threats that up until now have been handled in a very piecemeal fashion. And so what they're trying to do is stand back and get a bigger overview of what needs to be done. Because as anyone in this field will tell you, within the Pentagon, within the services, they can't prevent every attack. They just too much. So they have to, they have to make a list of priorities, and this is going to help them do that.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question that you probably can't answer. This is my last question. But you indicated that they want to automate the fixes eventually. And I'm curious what your opinion is. Is this unrealistically optimistic? Is it even feasible to automatically detect and fix security vulnerabilities?
I think it's probably a pretty ambitious goal. I think there's some automated fixing that can happen now already, so it's not completely out of the question. It's just a question of the scale. You think about all of the different areas that potentially are vulnerable, and a lot of concerns were exacerbated through the OPM hack. Losing all of that security clearance data created a whole new set of vulnerabilities that is of particular concern to the Pentagon, because it creates new opportunities for people to have information to do very, very targeted phishing, sort of spear phishing, other attacks on individuals at key points in that weapon system, in the weapon systems and in other sectors. So both in the private sector, many, many contractors that build all the weapons and run the installations, actually provide the bodies that do intelligence work. All of those people are people that have security clearances. And I think, the OPM hack really made it clear to the department that there were many vulnerabilities that they were not even aware they had. And they're doing a deep dive now to go and look beyond OPM to see what other databases might be vulnerable and what can be done to shore that security up there.
Yeah, what it appears to be happening is that they're cross-referencing travel and other things, the security clearance data, with medical databases and financial databases to figure out who's got either medical problems or financial problems and who can be blackmailed, or who's having affairs or things like that, and find out who in the government with security clearances can be blackmailed into becoming an agent for whomever it is, China, Russia, whoever. So, yeah, scary stuff, and hope they lock it down. I mean, China and Russia have their own nuclear weapons, and we shouldn't let them use ours. That's what it's just my 2 cents. Andrea Shalal's at Reuters.com and on Twitter at Reuters Aero. That's Reuters AERO. Andrea, thank you for coming on Tech News today.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Well, in follow-up news, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella yesterday said that the first version of their HoloLens augmented reality system would not be for consumers, but for enterprises. And he hinted that the consumer version might take as many as 5 years. 5 years. Lauren, I think I'm going to stop the show so I can cry for a minute.
Yeah, I think this is a real shame. I think that a lot of people were hoping that they were going to be able to get consumer access to the HoloLens, particularly as VR is heating up. I mean, you have people like, Oculus and Samsung and Sony, and they're just all in the game trying to put together, a really great comprehensive VR package. And it seemed like the HoloLens was going to be Microsoft's answer to that. And yet here we are, us plebeians are going to have to wait some time before we can get the HoloLens in our own homes.
But you developers out there are in luck, because developers are the other category of person who will be able to get their hands on this. So, yeah, I had a feeling this was the case. It seemed too good to be true. It seemed too soon to be true. So we'll see what that enterprise version is going to be used for. Well, in courtroom drama news, Apple won yet another court ruling against Samsung yesterday. The U.S. Appeals Court ruled that Samsung is not allowed to use Apple's slide to unlock, autocorrect, or quick links features. And yeah, this is weird news, and I'm sure that this isn't over. And by the time it is over, nobody will be using these features anyway. So this is already from a 4-year-old court case.
Yeah, they've been locked in court battles related to gestures and to movements and to proprietary software interaction for as long as I think smartphones have been around. Ever since they've been in competition, they've been locked in court. And this is just another one of those things where I don't think that it's going to ultimately affect the way that users interact with their Apple or their Samsung devices, but it'll just be another pain in the butt and more money in the pockets of corporate lawyers.
Yeah, it's the lawyer full employment plan, I think, that they've got going on over there between Samsung and Apple. Well, we got some more news for you coming right up. But first, I want to tell you about Gazelle. It's, of course, iPhone Day today. And so, you're going to want to sell your old device, and Gazelle is the place to sell it. Don't go to some, internet site where you can post the thing and then meet somebody in a parking lot somewhere to sell your phone. You're not going to get as much money. You're going to end up putting your life at risk, potentially. Sell it to Gazelle. It's super easy. Just go to Gazelle's website, which is GAZELLE.com. Choose the phone, indicate the carrier if there is a carrier, tell them the condition, and they give you a price. And when you love that price, and I think you will, they'll send you a box and put it in the box and send it back, and they pay you money. And it's just fantastic. I have a fantastic wife. She's fantastic in many ways, and one of the ways that she's fantastic is right now she's off buying me an iPhone. And so as soon as I get my hands on that sucker, the old one's going right off to Gazelle. And it's a pretty new phone, so I'm going to get a lot of money for it. So very, very cool. It's a great way to upgrade. And, of course, if you do want to get maximum bang for the buck when you do buy a phone, buy it from Gazelle as well, because they have just like new phones, or they have some phones with some gentle wear that are really inexpensive. But either way, you're going to get more phone for the money if you buy from Gazelle. So find out what your iPhone's worth. Trade in your used phone and electronics for cash. Visit Gazelle.com today. And we thank Gazelle for their support of Tech News Today. Well, our words of the day are Nexus 5X and Nexus 6P. According to sources cultivated by Droid Life, these are the respective official names of Google's LG and Huawei Nexus phones that will be unveiled week after next. This is pretty, expected labeling, Lauren, but still it's nice to know what they're going to be called.
Yeah, I really am looking forward to seeing the form factor and size. I think that I've now officially pledged my allegiance to the iPhone 6S, but I have written before about how I have really tiny hands. And I'm always looking to see whether or not form factors are indicating that there will still be a market for that smaller phone, or if it'll be bigger. And using the word 5 always interests me, specifically because Nexus often uses its nomenclature to also indicate the size.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of people with small hands and small phones and so on, I don't know if you saw the Jimmy Kimmel stunt where they went out on the streets of Hollywood Boulevard in Hollywood and told people that like a 4 or 5 year old iPhone was the new iPhone, and that they have an iPhone mini or something. I don't know what they called it, but people are like, wow, this is fantastic. It's so innovative. So anyway, typical Jimmy Kimmel thing. Well, in news you could lose, researchers at the U.S. Department of Energy Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, more affectionately known as Berkeley Labs, have invented a Harry Potter-like invisibility cloak technology. The cloak is actually made with gold nano antennas, barely 80 nanometers in thickness, that can be wrapped around an object. Random dents in the surface, or arbitrary dents, I think is what they call them, not random, they reroute the reflected light wave. So the effect is that a 3D object reflects light like a flat mirror. The cloak can be turned on or off by switching the polarization of the nano antennas, and the first cloak created by the researchers is microscopic in size, but this technology could theoretically be scaled up to create, say, a real-life James Bond car. I'm referring, of course, to the Bond flick Die Another Day, and here is the invisible car scene from that movie. And here comes the invisible car using whatever that was, mid-90s technology, movie technology. And the way they explained this in the movie, if I recall, is that it was a little ridiculous. They said there are little cameras that take a picture of the other side, and then they project those images on this side. And so you're basically kind of looking through the car. Totally different concept than the technology we're talking about. So James Bond gets in, the snowmobile crashes into the invisible car, revealing its existence, and then the creepy-looking bald dude with the freaky zombie eyes calls in the goons, and they all have matching snowmobiles. Anyway, that's what we're looking at. And I for one definitely want an invisible paint job on my car, on my Prius. So.
Yeah, I'm going to date myself a minute because I grew up with Harry Potter, so the opportunity to have an invisibility cloak is super exciting. I remember thinking that that was thrilling when I was a child, so having the opportunity to sort of escape is really exciting.
So you're volunteering in advance to be the reviewer for the next web when the invisibility cloak comes out.
Absolutely, and I'm also a certified Gryffindor, so this will be perfect.
Okay, great. Okay, good. Well, if they come out with the James Bond car, I'll jump on that one. If it's a Harry Potter cloak, then you can get it. Either way, this thing is going to be reviewed. It's very cool technology, and I love to see this kind of thing. And it'll be nice to see if they can scale this up and make a real product out of it. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Joseph Svitak, who posted this picture on Twitter, and this is from your appearance last week. We're both looking very serious there. Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
yeah, but my hair looks so good.
Your hair looks marvelous. So there we are. And yeah, awesome picture. And yeah. And it's, I don't know how you use the mouse pad with it up on the screen like that, but that's cool that it's a TWiT mouse pad. Very cool. How come I don't have a TWiT mouse pad? I guess I don't use a mouse. That explains it. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup and post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook. And use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT so we can find it. Lauren Hockenson, what are you working on these days, and where can people follow your work, follow your stuff on, say, Twitter?
Absolutely. Well, I remain the San Francisco reporter for the Next Web, so you can catch my work there. I have recently put out some pieces about Dreamforce, including one that will run today, so keep an eye out for that. I also have my own podcast. It's called Nothing Matters, where I discuss technology, politics, and other really cool millennial things. You can find that at No Matters Cast on Twitter or on SoundCloud, and actually you can subscribe to it on iTunes now. Very exciting. And otherwise, just find me on Twitter at L. Hockenson. I will be probably amply distributing Pomeranian GIFs as soon as I get off of TWiT.
Okay. All right. Pomeranian GIFs.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Can't wait to see those. Thank you so much for co-anchoring today, and we'll see you next time you're on the show.
As always, it's a pleasure, Mike.
Pleasure was all mine. Let us know what's on your mind. Send email to tnt@twit.tv or call 260-TNT-SHOW. That's 260-868-7469. You can subscribe to Tech News Today by searching for the show in your podcast app. You can choose some other way to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. And you can watch us live, of course, every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1700 UTC at twit.tv/live. You can follow us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike Elgan. Also, don't miss our other news show, Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific every single weeknight. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Tech News Today. The show is produced by Jason Cleanthis and edited by Kevin King, I hope. My name is Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you Monday.